Hello everyone. Today's video, we're diving into Procreate to create this adorable watercolor style Christmas frog. I'll walk you through my favorite techniques to bring this Christmas frog to life, step by step. Whether you're picking up the Apple Pencil for the first time or you're already a Procreate pro, these tips are designed to help you level up your game. All the brushes and canvases I'm using are linked in the description below, including the free stamp and color palettes for you to get started. For today's demonstration, I'll be working with the fine textured canvas, but feel free to use any canvas you want. As you can see, I have already imported my stamp here, and all the paintings that we're going to do is going to be underneath the stamp, which is going to be underneath the watercolor texture canvas effect. So any layers that we are creating, it's going to be underneath the stamp. And if you want to create your own or practice some sketching techniques, you can reduce the opacity to use the stamp as an outline. Just something for you to try and learn. To begin, I'm going to focus on the bigger areas like the sweater, Santa hat, and then focus on the face and then the lighting and the shadows. As you can see, I have already saved all the color palettes for you in order so we can do it step by step. So let's pick that first red tone color and use the wet on dry brush to begin with 100% opacity and 100% size. And start from the left and then we'll go all the way around. An helpful tip here is to focus on the outlines, which will solidify and shape the boundaries of your artwork. It acts like a guideline. And once the outline is completed, we can just generally fill in the areas simple. Now, keeping the same settings, we're going to paint the sweater all the way from the left, and then we're going all the way into the top here. We'll paint the top collar of the frog later on, so we'll leave that empty. And if you're enjoying these tutorials, hit that like button, subscribe to my channel so you'll be notified when new videos are released. Now we'll focus on the upper part of the sweater, so we're going to create a new layer. And we'll use the flat brush to have a layering effect, using the second tone color, which is a bit darker, and keep the size to around 30%. And what we're going to do is just slide it down like this, and we'll start from the center, and we'll overlap them just like this. And we can lightly fill in the bottom part just like this. And we can use the eraser tool and the fine line brush, but any brush will work, and we'll just clean up the top of the area. I really like using the flat brush for these techniques is to have a nice natural overlapping effect. It gives a unique look that makes it a bit more realistic like watercolor with overlapping effect here. So we're going to create a new layer. Now we use the dark tone color again, use the wet on dry brush, and everything is going to be 100% opacity and size. So I determined the light is coming from the right side, so the second layers of midtones are going to be a little bit more casting to the left. This will give a natural depth and dimension look, making your artwork pop out even more. We'll work from the top all the way to the bottom now, adding that second tone light. The neck is going to be a little bit covered here, so we're going to cover a little bit to the top. Now I'm going to add a little bit of layers like this to give a little bit more depth in the neck of the frog sweater area. I decided to paint this Christmas frog with an ugly Christmas sweater because I find it kind of quirky and it's pretty unique with its colors. And frogs are not typically associated with Christmas, but you can really make anything festive with an ugly sweater with a cute, elegant, charming little frog. And the colors just work perfectly with the red and the green. I'm putting a bit more second tone colors that's a bit darker behind the arm to show that the frog is actually putting his hands behind its back like this. It kind of feels like the frog is about to give you a wonderful present. I decided to add a little bit more shadows underneath the designs of the sweater here to give it a little bit more depth. As well as the bottom piece of the sweater, and also these lights. Of course, you need to have Christmas lights on your sweater to make it just a bit more whimsical. And again, I'm going to cast some of the light on the right side of the shoulders here as well. And now we're going to create a new layer. Now moving on to the face of the frog here. And we'll start with this first green light tone color and use the wet on dry brush with 100% opacity and 100% size. Majority of the frog's face is going to be green, but the chin's going to be a different color to give that unique style look. So we'll leave this chin alone and we'll have the top part mostly green here. The key to this is to have layers, multiple layers with mid-tone and dark tones to give that natural realistic look. Of course, having a single color like this looks good, but it kind of looks cartoonish. And I love making something a bit more realistic to help people push their boundaries of making art and how easy it can be for you to achieve this. From here, I'm going to add another layer and we'll add a second tone color. And the center is going to be a little bit brighter and the corners are going to be a little bit darker. So the top of the hat is covering, so it's going to be a bit darker, but generally that's going to be a bit more darker because of the natural grooves of the frog's face. And naturally there's going to be some grooved and caved areas of the face here. So we're going to fill in the areas like this and simply follow along just like this. Same thing with the left side of the face. I know it might look a bit funky at first, but trust me, all the blending process and the dark tones is going to make a big difference. And now add another layer and we're going to add the dark tone now. And focusing on the centers of the areas where we're going to add the most darkest areas here, just like this. And cheeks and underneath the nose here is going to be more grooved. And underneath the cheeks here as well. And put some dark tones underneath the nose because the light's reflecting from the top right corner. And just like that, we're finished with the green parts, and now we'll focus on the chin area of the frog. Now we're going to create a new layer and pick this yellow bright tone color that's a bit beige. And keeping everything at 100% opacity and size, and just filling in the chin like this. And then we'll create a new layer and use the second tone color of the yellow here. And we're going to focus underneath the chin here, leaving the white part slightly to allow the lip to be a bit brighter. And then we'll add another layer. So create a new layer and use this dark tone color now. And again, focusing on the bottom of the lip here, and also the left corners and the right corners. Now we'll finish off the Santa Claus hat. And rather than keeping it the white tone color, I want to give a bit more vintage look, so we'll continue using the same color that we used under the chin to make it more cohesive. This time we'll use the flat brush, keeping the size around 40% and generally filling the areas with this light tone color that we used for the chin. And we can reduce the size just to get the little corners. And also this part of the hat as well. and add another layer and use the second tone mid-tone color to add some depth here on the right side and also the left side of the hat where the shadows will be a bit more prominent. Now we'll paint the eye of the frog. So we'll pick this yellow tone color and we'll focus on the outer parts of the pupil. Just like this, using the flat brush and going in a circle like this. And do the same thing with the right side of the eye. Now here's a simple technique to avoid making a mess and keeping things simple. So we're going to create a new layer and select the clipping mask. So what this will do, it will allow the layer to be painted, but only on the layers that we just painted on the layer before. So since we clipped the mask to the layers that we use for the eye, it's only going to paint the eye and nothing else. So as you can see, it's not painting, but it'll only paint the yellow parts. This will keep things simple and clean without worrying too much about painting in the outer layers. So we're going to create depth by using the wet on dry brush and focusing on the outer layers just like this, just slightly on the outside. Do the same thing with the right side of the eye. This will give a nice beautiful glow to the eye. Now go to your top left corner, pick on the adjustments and select the Gaussian blur. Now touch the screen and move it slightly to the right while pressing the screen at the same time. This will give a nice blur between the two colors like this. And from there, I'm going to use another layer and pick this light tone color to paint at the outside of the eyes, because I don't want it to be pure white like this. And to finish off the painting of the face, we're going to create a new layer and pick this pink tone color using the wet on dry brush and paint this cute little cheek blushing tone to give a nice little unique touch. Now let's not forget to paint the bottom piece of the frog here. So we're going to pick that light tone color, use the wet on dry brush, and just fill in like this. And simply add another second dark tone color underneath the sweater. Now it's time to start blending together. So to avoid over smudging, I'm going to keep the sweaters and the Christmas hat together and the face of the frog separate. So by using your two fingers, we're going to pinch the sweater area in the hat and then pinch everything else minus the blushing cheek that we just created. So you should have 3 layers like this. The blending process is pretty easy. So we'll start with picking the layer that we want to blend. So we'll pick the sweater here and then we'll pick the moving blender and keeping the size to around to 20%. And we're just going to blend 2 tone colors like this, slightly wiggling around like this, moving the colors together. This will give a natural, beautiful blending effect, mixing the colors to make it a bit more realistic. And once we're done with the sweater, we can now move on and select the body of the frog. Just start blending them just like this. So what we want to focus is painting 2 tone colors like this. By only painting 2 tone colors, you can avoid over smudging the areas and having more control over your paints. And don't forget to blend the chin area as well. Focusing on the 2 tone layers, just like this. Don't overthink it, keep it smooth. And select that Christmas hat layer again, and we're going to mix in the colors together. I recommend when using the moving blender to move in one direction to over smudging. So now we can move on to adding some details of the sweater here. So create a new layer and pick this light tone color that we use for the chin and use the gouache brush, keeping the opacity at around 90% and size to around 30%. And we're just going to fill in the colors on top of the red of the diamond shaped designs on the sweater. So we'll go from left all the way to the right, just like this. Again, to make the painting a bit more unique and contrasting with one another, rather than using a pure white tone color, I'm using some of the colors that I've used before to allow the paint colors to work together rather than having the paint go against each other. Now you can go from left to right with angling each corner, or you can do a different technique where you focus on the bottom piece, just like this, going zigzags and doing the same thing on the top, and then filling to the top in the middle. This kind of just reminds me of the times where I was just painting coloring books. It's therapeutic, it's fun. Sometimes Christmas time can be stressful time with all the shopping and chaos that happens, but give yourself a break. And you're doing it by painting with me. And I really just want to take this moment to thank you for being here, watching this video and painting along with me. It means so much that you have taken the time of your day to join me to be on this creative journey with me. And I thought, why not put some heart shapes at the bottom of the sweater here? And I decided to use the gouache brush this time for these designs is because it has a nice texture of random roughness to it, kind of giving that sweater feeling of the wool. Now it's time to add the Christmas lights, and we're going to pick this green tone color, and we're going to use a default brush that comes with Procreate, and it's called the light pen. And keeping the opacity at 100%, and we'll just paint the inside of the circles here like this. Every other light's going to be colored because I'm going to paint with a yellow bright tone color for the other ones. So pick this yellow tone color, but we're going to make it a little bit more yellow. And simply fill in the colors like this. And now we're going to create a watercolor stain look. And to do this, we're going to create a new layer on top of the layers that we just created. And we pick this dark green tone color at the bottom here and use the wet on dry brush, keeping the opacity to around 35%. And as you can see, it's creating that water stain look when the paint dries, to make it a bit more realistic from a watercolor. All the way around to the cheek. We want to put some more stain looks to darken the area as well, so we'll focus on the groove areas in the center and also the side of the cheek like this, where we already had the mid-tone colors. Now to make it a bit more natural looking, we're using the moving blender and we'll slightly blend them, but leaving some of the stain look still there and present. Now we're going to focus on making shadows. So we're going to pick this dark blue tone color, use the wet on dry brush with the opacity around 35% and keeping the size to 100%. And we'll start from the top and move our way to the bottom. Just like this, it's going to be a bit more shadows on the left side and behind the head here, since the light's coming from the right. And since the hat is covering a little bit to the head, it's going to be a bit darker with some shadows. And parts of the nose, and also the left side of the cheek and the eyes. And since the chin is a bit lower, it's going to be covered, so there's going to be a bit more shadow there. Again, on the right side of the eye is going to be a bit more grooved and more shadow there. Same thing with the sweater, it's going to be a bit more darker with the shadows on the casket on the left side. And we can increase the opacity to make it a bit darker because it's a bit darker tone colors of the red to make it more standout. And underneath the designs, since the grooves are going to be protruding out a little bit. a bit more shadows underneath the frog here like this. Now we'll add a light source reflection. So we're going to create a new layer on top of the layers that we have. Now pick that gouache brush again. Now focusing on the right side. And keeping the opacity to around 90% and size to around 35-40%. And just like this, giving a little bit of the light reflection. Even on the eyes, it's going to be slightly reflected, but we're going to reduce the opacity to around 70 here. Same thing with the left eye, and some light reflections on the right side of the shoulder. So I'm going to add this nice watercolor stain background look. To do this, I need to add the layer at the most bottom. So here's the trick. Find the most bottom layer, select that layer and create a new layer, and then we can drag the layer all the way to the bottom, just like that. Now pick this light green tone color that we have, and we're going to use the wet on wet brush, keeping the size and 100% as well as the opacity. And just slightly go around like this, all the way around the corners. And we're going to use the same technique where we create a new layer and select that layer and use the clipping mask. But we're going to add the second tone color, same brush, going around just a slightly edge, just like this. And from there, we're going to use the Gaussian blur again and drag all the way right. And just like that, we have a nice water stain look that's been dried up like watercolor style. And to finish it off, we're going to create a layer at the top and pick a white tone color and use the wet splash brush, keeping the size to around 30-40% and just dragging it left and right, giving a nice snow effect. And there you have it. You can easily print these out by exporting it as a PNG or PDF file into your phone or directly to your printer if you have one. You can cut it out into nice shapes to create your favorite Christmas cards, gift cards, Christmas tags, whatever you like. Now your paintings are no longer just stuck in Procreate or digital format. Now you have printed it in a physical form. Show off your beautiful work to your friends and family. If you found this tutorial helpful, easy, and fun to do, click on the next video and I'll see you there.